Hey everybody, today is finally the day. I am going to shoot a video about my SunSun Filters and the experiences I've had with them. For those of you that follow along, you will know that a little while ago, maybe 2 months ago or thereabouts, I discovered that the inside of my SunSun 304B canister filters was deteriorating due to the ultraviolet light. I was just running the UV light continuously rather than periodically or as needed. I just left it run constantly, and as a result, the UV radiation deteriorated the low quality plastic that you get in these budget filters. So I've been wanting to shoot a video about my experience, about what happened to the filter, about my contact with the SunSun customer service and what happened with them, and what I am ultimately going to do about the issue. So I've been waiting on a few products. I've made some orders, and some of them seem too good to be true, and of course they were, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. But what I can tell you is that I now have a brand new SunSun 304B that we're going to start working on today, and as the video progresses, I'm going to explain why I bought a new filter altogether. And we're also probably going to pull the filter out of this tank too. These are my two oldest tanks I have down here, and the filters are probably the most in need of repair because they've been up and running the longest. So we're probably going to get in and have a look at both of these filters. This is probably going to be a fairly in-depth video, but I do want to show you the inside of the filters. We can have a discussion about that, and then of course I will tell you all about my whole problem and my process and everything else. So let me get started and get one of these filters pulled apart, and we will start from there. The next time I see you, we will be inside one of these filters. Alright, I got everything set up and ready to go, so let's go ahead and pull the filter out from under here. I have the new filter already pulled out and set off to the side. We're going to get to that in a minute. In the meantime, let's pull this one out. Get it unplugged. Now that, I always say that opens the valve. It does not. It closes these valves, but it allows you to pull this off, and that's why I always think of it as opening it. You still don't want to yank it off of there. You will get some water that squirts out. So those valves are now closed. As long as that stays the way it is, this will be fine. So I usually keep a square bucket handy. You'll see how this has the glass sticking down, so the square bucket holds that safely out of the way. Now this tray is still intact. You can see here this part is what we're looking at. That is where the UV light goes down through it, and by running it continuously for, I don't know, maybe 2 years or so, a little more than 2 years, it wound up just breaking down and deteriorating the plastic altogether. The upside is that that glass tube only goes down through the first 2 trays. So out of the 4 trays that are in here, only 2 were destroyed, and so I flipped them around and I put the 2 that used to be on the bottom at the top, and now you can see this one used to be one of the upper trays where that whole entire column has just been deteriorated away by the UV light. So I've since learned not to just let the UV light run constantly. And then here of course is the bottom section that in theory should allow the water to go all the way down, but there's nothing at all there. This is just a flat open tray. So what I'm going to do now is take this brand new unit, put all of this biomaterial in that unit, and put the new lid and everything on it, and then I'll have this old unit to use for spare parts, and I will have 4 trays, 2 of which do not work very well, missing these pieces, and then 2 of which are fully functional. So I also have another canister filter just like this for this tank, and I believe it also has 2 that are damaged. So what I'll do is I'll pull the trays out of that one, I'll put the 2 intact trays back in and swap them out, and I'll have brand new 4 good trays in that one. I'll have a brand new filter over here, and then I'll have a completely spare hardware kit and spare filter altogether to put off to the side somewhere in case I need it. The reason I did it this way was because when I looked at the pricing, to buy 4 of these trays by themselves with shipping and everything was going to cost me about $42. It's just about time to replace the UV bulb in the filter anyway, and that was going to be another $12 or $13. So I was already looking at more than $50 just to get 4 trays and a bulb, when for $80 I got an entire new filter and everything. So now I have a spare filter. Unfortunately, I'll have a spare filter that will have 4 damaged trays in it. But since these trays are not now being used, I will be able to take these and try to, you know, find a piece of PVC or something that fits in there and just be able to rework these, and I will now have another fully functioning filter. So let me continue on. We'll see where this breakdown goes. I'll probably wind up pulling that one out of there today, and we'll just see what we do with all these filters here in the next few minutes. Alright, so we're now done the water change on this tank. This filter is set up and ready to go, and we're going to have a look at the filter on the Gurami tank in just a moment. But with this filter, I deliberately left this empty. It's got all the new trays in it. It's the complete new filter with my old biomedia, and then of course we just left the spray bar and filter intake attached. And I'm going to show you getting this started from an empty canister. I used to fill them up, and it made it a lot easier to prime the pump and get it started. But sometimes if you do it just right with an empty canister, you'll actually get a siphon going and it'll fill it up by itself. If not, you'll get to see how much pumping I have to do in order to get this thing started. Usually it's easier just to take the top off, fill it with water, and close it back up. But let's see how this goes. Well, it doesn't seem like a siphon's going to get established. There we go. Now I can hear the water filling this up, and of course you can see the bubbles. Well, I don't know if you can see them or not. So this is now filling up. We can move it back here a little bit and get it plugged in. And this hose is not actually filling at the moment. It's just there because as this fills up, the water level is going to drop, and I'm going to have to top it off a little bit again. So I also wanted to leave this off so we can make sure the light works. And I know you can't see it, but I've got my hand cupped over it, and the light did indeed come on. So we'll leave that off for the time being. Alright, now we're full enough where the water is actually beginning to circulate. And over time I'll have to jiggle it and shake it a few times to get the bubbles to fully cycle through. So this one's up and running now. Let's pull this one apart and see how this actually looks on the inside. This one's probably going to be really, really dirty. I don't even remember the last time I did a water change on this filter, or a filter change rather. It's not too bad. Okay, so our top tray is intact. The second tray is intact. The third tray is somewhat deteriorated, but intact enough, especially that low down in the tank. That shouldn't make much of a difference, or that low down in the filter rather. And the bottom tray is mildly deteriorated, so that's not too bad looking. So I will not have to worry too much about it. I'll take these two really bad looking trays, and I'll take the two decent trays from the other room that I saved, and I'll swap them out. So I'll still have two spare trays that are usable but not perfect, and then I'll be able to try to fix up those other two. So I will have a whole complete spare filter when all of this is said and done. So let me get all this done and put back together, and then we'll have a discussion about my experience with calling the SunSun customer service people and what I've gone through to end up at this solution. So sit tight, let me get done with this, and I'll see you in a minute. Alright everybody, all the filters are put back together, everything is up and running, and I actually found something that I think might work to fix those broken trays, but we'll do another video on that on a different occasion. So what happened when I discovered that the filters were starting to deteriorate a little while ago? When I called the customer service on the number that actually comes with the packaging, so this wasn't just some number I found online, this actually comes with the packaging. I called the 800 number, and I got a hold of somebody, and I told them, you know, this is what was going on. And to me, that seemed like a defect. I would assume, even though these are budget brand filters, they'd still make a UV shield out of a plastic that was capable of withstanding UV radiation. But apparently they used the very low budget plastic, and I was told that they fully expected the plastic to break down like that over about a 2 to 3 year period. So they told me that since mine broke down I don't know, I think I told him it was about a year and a half or something like that. I don't remember what I told him, but it was significantly less time than the normal amount of time that it takes for the plastic to break down. So because of that, they told me they would send me trays for $5 a piece plus shipping. And we worked it out, and I was supposed to get about 7 trays or 8 trays or something like that. I was going to get some for various different filters I've got. I have a bunch of these different SunSun filters. And nothing ever happened, and nothing ever showed up, and I waited, and I called them back, and the guy's like, oh yeah, I tried to get a hold of your PayPal account, but nothing went through. And you know, so I know he's lying or something, you know, something wasn't right. It just seemed sketchy. I've never had issues with my PayPal before, so we tried to do it again. We ran it through again, and you know, I placed my order. Once again, nothing ever happened, nothing ever showed up on the PayPal. When I called back, I was told they were going to do it again, but if it didn't go through, I could send money to this, you know, account or something, and then they'd place the order. And that was the last I ever heard of them or contacted them or anything else. The whole thing just seemed really sketchy. So I wrote off my idea that I was going to get replacements directly from customer service. So I looked around online, and I found a bunch of different places. In fact, a bunch of my different viewers sent me links to companies that sell original equipment and aftermarket replacement parts for filters. And of course, the SunSun is just the parent company. A lot of different manufacturers buy their filter from SunSun and slap their own sticker on it, Aquatop being one of them. And I was able to find Aquatop replacement trays. I know earlier I said 4, but it was a 3-pack of the trays, and after shipping and everything, I believe it came to $42 or something. So it really just seemed really expensive, and I was considering buying just a better filter and just, you know, upgrading to a higher quality filter. But I just don't have that kind of money when I was looking at the prices of some of those better filters. And so I looked again at the price of the new one. I thought about the fact that I'd been running the UV light constantly for 2 years or so. And, you know, whether I'm using the UV light or not now doesn't matter. If I've got an old spent light in there, if I ever needed it, I'd still need a good working UV light. So after running it for 2 years, it was definitely time to replace the tube. So I don't currently have the tube in use, but I do have a fresh brand new tube, so should I ever get an algal outbreak or some sort of bacterial bloom in the tank, I can then run my brand new UV light in the tank. So that was going to cost me another $11 or $12. Like I said, I was looking at more than $50 just to buy 3 trays and the tube, when for $80 I could get a brand new filter. And so that's the way I went. And now I've got pretty much a complete hardware kit with all of the fittings and hose and spray bar and intake and all that. The canister itself doesn't really matter, it's just a plastic bucket. And then the top section has an old UV light on it, the one we were just discussing. And it probably needs a good rinsing out and everything else because it's been running for so long. The internal workings are probably gummed up and clogged up just like any other filter does after a long period of time. So I will now be able to take this one apart, clean it, get a good look at the inside of it, find out how it works, and if my early experiments with the fixing the trays works, excuse me, I'll be able to fix the trays, and I will have another brand new, well, we can't really call it a brand new, but we'll have another filter that I can use. And I actually think I'll put it on this tank because while this tank is much smaller, this one has a 303B on it, and it really just doesn't quite move the water I want to move around this tank. I am eventually going to bump up the power head in the back and put a bigger power head on it, but I also think I'm going to put this filter on it once I get it up and running, or I may possibly put it on my native tank here and run 2 filters on this tank. This tank has a 404B, and I don't recommend getting the 404B. I still really don't have a problem with recommending the 304B. It's a good filter. It's a low budget filter. It's good and dependable, and if you don't run the UV all the time, you won't really have any problems with it at all as far as I can tell. So for the money, I still recommend them. The 404B is pretty much identical. The only real difference I can see is that you cannot turn off the UV light. It's just on. When you plug the filter in, it's just on. So the next time I get into this tank and do a filter cleaning, I'm also going to simply manually disconnect the tube. Although I may not. I may let this one run for a little while because I do have a lot of algal growth in this tank with the new fish I bring in all the time. I might be bringing parasites into the tank, so maybe leaving the UV running on this tank is the best option after all. So maybe we'll talk about that in another video. Anyway, thanks for watching this one. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. You never know what you're going to get with me. And I know I've been talking about doing this video for quite a while now, so I finally got around to it. So thanks for your patience. Again, make sure you're subscribed. This is my angelfish tank. Thanks again for watching. See you real soon in the next one.